happened to me. I think I was maybe talking about it before, but there she is. It's actually not a bad little saw. It just has a few things that I'm going to try and change and hopefully make it run consistent and be a better saw. The main problem was the coil. Well, it keeps dying. Like it would run good and then it would die, but it seemed to be getting better towards the end, so I don't know if the coil did have moisture and it was drying out. I took the coil and I baked it for 2.5 hours at like 225 degrees or something like that. Okay, so got this little McCulloch Powersaw PM 325 AV 16-inch bar, and I did a muffler mod to it. I cleaned the carb, put a carb kit, put new lines, filter, and it runs. It actually rips really good. I'm surprised for a little 35cc saw. It runs really cool, this engine too. Does not get hot, but it's got intermittent spark. Now I noticed this here was rubbing on the cylinder head here, or on the cylinder itself, the top. So I'm gonna clean this thing all up, and I'm gonna just take the coil off, see if I can clean it, and hopefully get spark again. But and maybe see what I can do with that. If anything, tape it up, put something over it. It's probably gonna need a new coil, but I may even try baking this. I've never tried that. I heard like the home light coils were famous for that, and guys put them in the oven. So we'll try it on this one too and see if it works. I noticed the line was broken off for the oil pump here, from the oil tank to the oil pump, so I'm going to replace that. And there's tons of sawdust in here. It doesn't seem to get out very good, so I may modify this thing and put a little filter system on there. It just, yeah, I've already cleaned it out a bit. There's still lots of sawdust in there. It does not seem to blow out of there very well. So, yeah, I don't know. I've heard mixed stories on these. Some guys say they're good, other guys say they're junk. But like I said, it cuts actually really good. I was surprised. And I'm just gonna blow everything out, and then once I finally get spark and I start putting this thing together, then we'll start maybe doing a little mod there. I'm gonna put some extra holes in the cover for the intake, right here, and maybe at the corner there where my thumb is, and right there. So that's the plan anyways, just to give it a little more airflow. It sucks air. It can get air from here and here, and then this little spot where the wires come through right there. Yeah, so we'll do just a couple little mods, little cheap little free little mods like we do to the other saws, and it seems to make a difference. The air filter system is pretty open there, and it seems to actually work really good and keep the sawdust out, so we'll see how it goes. Gotta get spark first. I took the coil off. I cleaned it out a bit here, see? And I already cleaned a little bit off of this. I'm really hoping that was my spark issue. It's just caked in sawdust. So this line was broken. So any sawdust that came in here was obviously getting saturated in oil. I don't know. It was caked on there pretty good. So I'm going to give it a good cleaning, clean up the posts and everything, and put it back and gap the coil, and just see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it has spark and it works good. We'll have to fix this wire up just to see if we can. If it fixes it, if not, then we'll have to get a new coil. So I got all torn apart. They're a little more work than some other saws, but nothing too crazy. I got it kind of cleaned up. And anyways, I baked the coil, and I'm gonna see if that fixes it. But not sure if it will or not. This is cracked on me there a little bit, but that's okay. I got another one coming on order. Just want to see if it's gonna actually cure it. It would run and then die. So anyhow, I'm gonna try to make this thing a little bit better than it was from factory, because this thing likes to vapor lock, and I'm not sure. Okay, the audio cut out, but I was just saying that I didn't know where the fuel tank was venting, and then this is just showing the oil pump, and that the oil line was leaking there. Take note of how close the fins are to that oil pump. They're kind of famous for failing. We'll get to that later, what I did to it.
But it seems to cool really well. The case seals on here. The plastic cover seals right on here, all in through there. That's good. But the heat has nowhere to go once you shut it off, and it just heats up the tank. So I'm gonna see if maybe I can put some heat tape on the tank just to maybe help it out just a little bit, and see if it'll help with vapor locking. And we'll see what the vent. It doesn't seem to vent really good. They do oil like the Exxon Valdez, so I'm thinking maybe it does vent into there, and then when this pressure's up, maybe the oil pump system works off the tank pressuring. I know a lot of the old saws worked something like that, and they had a duct bill for a vent, so I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna get into it and see what it's all made of. But if I can try and keep the heat off the tank, I will. And I already gutted the muffler. I'm probably gonna drill a couple more. Where are we here? Sorry. Those are factory holes. I might drill a couple more there just to let her breathe a little better, but I did gut what was in here, and it definitely woke the saw up. And this here I just taped up, but I'm gonna try to put some silicone on here, take the tape off, put silicone on here, because it rests up against the head. And yeah, it burns it through. So we're gonna do something with that, put a little sheath on it or something. Other than that, it does actually seem to cool well. It's got a little heat shield here. Where is it? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to move the camera so it focuses a little bit better. It keeps shaking around. It does have this heat shield in here. So, yeah. We'll just leave that there. But I'm going to rip this clutch off and stuff, and rip this outer cover off and see what's in behind here and what this thing's all about. But it's actually a cool little saw. They kind of get a bad reputation, like the Poulins and you know, a lot of homeowner saws. They definitely have a bad reputation. But you know, maybe with a little bit of work we can make this thing better. Another issue here is this just fills with oil. So I'm going to seal around the oil line here. I'm going to put some silicone around there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bead of silicone around here so it seals to the cover right here. So that when you're filling it with oil, you're not going to, if you overfill it, it just drips down in here, and then this fills up like crazy with sawdust, gets all, you know, just caked in here. Like it's nuts how much sawdust stays in there. And I think if that wasn't leaking, or there was no sweat here and the sawdust just stayed, you know, dry, not saturated with oil, I think it would help the problem a bit. So we're gonna try and mess with that and see what happens. I'm not doing anything to the. I don't think I'm gonna do anything with the intake. It sucks its air. It can suck a little bit from there, and it can suck some from there. So I think that's sufficient for air intake. It seemed to have good throttle response. So yeah, I put some new lines and filter on it and stuff. And then I want to see if I can somehow let this heat escape, because when you shut it off, I don't know where the heat can go. I guess it can kind of go out these little cubby holes here. You can kind of see right through there, sort of. But it doesn't really have a whole lot of place. I guess it does. Heat has to rise, but I mean, it's just going to go where it needs to go to get out. But we'll see what we can do with it here. Stay tuned. Okay, well, we got it torn apart. There's a little duct bill for the fuel tank. And then they've got another one under this little piece of foam. I just don't like this at all. There's oil everywhere all over this thing. What a setup. I don't know if I'm going to try to modify all this and make it so it's not leaking all over the place, or just leave it, or what, but there's got to be a better way. And the tank doesn't look like it has any kind of way to insulate. Like, a lot of the heat's here, but there's still, I think there's still heat that transfers down into the base quite a bit, so probably going to have to pull the flywheel off and check it out behind there. So yeah, okay, so there's the tank. So I'm going to see if I can put some, you see that? I'm going to clean that up, see if I can put heat tape on there. I don't know if that will help at all. Might, a little bit. Might help reflect the heat away from the tank. And then here's the oil pump right there. You see that? Everything's Loctited really well. Everything's good. It's just these are just hard to work on compared to like the Poolins. You can change an oil pump on those things super fast. These you got to literally tear the saw down to nothing. So, but whatever. They still seem like a cool saw. They definitely seem very well built. These things. Just like I said, a little harder to get at. But they do sell these online, the oil pumps. So that's good. I'm going to change this line. Put a new oil line on there. It's just got a little duck bill. I think I showed you that in the tank there. And yeah, we'll continue on. And I think it's time to head to the beer store and get a 6-pack because, yeah, because it's just that time. It's Saturday night, so let's go give her. We'll be right back. Okay, well, we're back. I don't like the taste of beer. I never ever did, right since I was a kid. But I just started drinking some of these. I'm not a big drinker, but you know, it's nice to have a few drinks when you're working on chainsaws. So yeah, 100% Canadian apples. Look at that. I like that. Supporting Canada. So yeah, we're gonna get back into this Power Mac PM325AV. 16. Stay tuned. Let's try this one. Pear flavored. Okay, so we got her all cleaned up. That's where I'm gonna put the let's see here. That's where I'm gonna put the heat tape, just to maybe reflect a little bit of the heat away from the tank, just to maybe help that tank from pressuring up so much, you know, fuel getting hot, then getting into the carbs and vapor locking the whole 9 yards. So we'll try that. I don't know what I can do with this oil tank. You see that? Where are we here? They just got that little duck bill, really tiny one under there in this foam. It kind of leaks a little bit there. Maybe I could put some coarser foam. It's not a, I don't know, it's not a great setup. I don't like how it can just leak out oil. I guess if the duck bill's working, it shouldn't. It's the idea of it. It's not going to leak oil, but I just think they could have did something better there. But anyway, yeah. So I'll put a new line on for the oil pump. The gear and everything looks good on here. Here's the little tiny little motor, little engine. Piston looks nice in there. And yeah, transfers open up really quickly on this one. They're really low in the cylinder. And that's about all we can do about that. I already put a carb kit in this thing. But I'm thinking what I might have to do, we'll see when I get it all back together. We'll see how it starts and everything. I did this with that John's thread, that 2037, 2036, whatever it was. 2037. Basically a Poolin 2450, super clean, same saw. Anyway, what I did was I took the carb apart, and where the needle and seat is, I took the spring there and I just stretched it out a little bit just to put a little more pressure so that when the tank and everything pressures up, it can't overcome the spring pressure and then just leak fuel into the cylinder. That really helped that John's thread. I put that thing to the torture test and it ran awesome. It never acted up. Cut really, really hard with it, let it idle, tried everything. I could not make it act up after that. But before that, it was always really hard starting. You had to pull it like 7 times to get it going, and I don't like that. I like it just to start in the second pull. First, second, maybe third pull max. That's all I'm willing to put up with. It's nice having them running really good. These are homeowner saws. They're not meant to cut all day long, but it's fun to, you know, kind of modify them up a little bit to see if they can be capable of that. Okay, well, we'll get back at it. I'm going to clean things up, put the new line on, and we'll be back. Maybe tonight, maybe not. That's from when I used to be a John's thread dealer. That was back in about 2004 2003, I think. No, yeah, 2003 or 2004, in that range. And I was only a dealer for a couple of years, and then what the heck happened? Did I stay a dealer right to the end? I can't remember before I shut. No, I think I got rid of the chainsaws. I just wasn't into them. I didn't know anything about them. It was just supposed to be a sideline, right? And I sold all the saws I got, I think, and I bought myself one, that 21, what was it, 2150 or 2050 Jubilee edition, the one that got stolen. And there's the old Articat sign. I got that from the dealership I used to work at. When I first moved to town here, I used to work at the Cat dealer as a mechanic there. But anyway, yeah, so I was into fixing dirt bikes and snowmobiles. I just wasn't into these things at all, saws. I didn't know how to tune them. I didn't know anything about them really, and I had zero interest. I gave away so many old Pioneers and John Deere saws and home lights, like piles of them, because they'd come in, and like our labor rates were too high even at that time. It was just cheaper to go buy a new saw. You know, how much time can you spend in a saw? Our labor rates were high. We lived in an expensive town, and I wasn't going to charge, a quarter of my rate. I still had my rent to pay and everything, so it made it tough to fix saws. It would have been nice if rent was a lot lower and cost of doing business was lower. Then I could have kept working on them. It's too bad I didn't stick with it more and learn more about it, but whatever. Anyway, I got the sign, and you know what? I had the light up, the sign outside that lit up, and I think I left it when I left the shop, or I threw it out. I can't remember, but man, I wish I had that thing. It was even older than, it had an older John Thread saw on it, because the guys before me were dealers, John Thread dealers for years and years, so they had an old lit up sign. But anyway, it's long gone. And here, this is my old 340 Dart Swinger that I had. That was the first thing I ever built, like first car I ever built. 340 4-speed, and the motor was built. Yeah, she's a hot little car. They still talk about that car to this day. It was a bit of a crowd pleaser. She could really burn the rubber in that old girl. First, second, third, and fourth, but don't try to get it stopped with the drum brakes. Yeah. One time I was showing my buddy how they rev so much higher than the 5-liter Mustangs, and I was revving it up to like 6,500 RPMs and then shifting. And anyways, I think I was just shifting in the third gear. We were just flying, doing like 130 mile an hour, 140 mile an hour, and then whatever we were doing, I can't remember. It was fast. And then all of a sudden, kaboom! Drive shaft broke in half. Took out a lot of stuff. Dented my whole floor. Yeah, it was a disaster. Broke the transmission in half. And yeah, it was good times. A lot of fun with that car. I wonder where it is now. So there's the coil. This is just kind of Mickey Mouse here because it's all I had. But I unscrewed. This thing was glued in there, and so I had to dig the wire out, and then I cut the wire so it's fresh, and I screwed it back in. And this is just because it was melting. This was melting on the cylinder head, so I just put that on there. But I'm sure I'm going to have to get a new coil, or I think I am. I'm going to order one regardless, because I'm probably going to sell this saw. And if it does keep working with this one, then I'll just give the coil to the person, whoever gets it off me, and I'll tell them that if it ever fails, just bring it to me, and I'll change it for them for free. But anyway, yeah, so we'll see if the baking trick worked or not. But other than that, I did a little muffler mod to it. Where's that? So what I did was I took the guts out of the muffler here. You see that? Kind of. Sorry, my lighting's bad here today. So those are the stock holes right there. But I'm going to drill a few more, just a couple more in here, just to open it up. It really made a big difference by taking all the baffling and everything out of there. I really woke it up. One thing about these little saws is the flywheel. It's pretty heavy. It's got a lot of weight to it, so There's a lot of inertia, I guess you call that, where it just keeps everything spinning. And it actually seems to cut well, but with the Muffler Mod, it should liven it up a little bit more. The way the oil pickup was in here, it wasn't set up so that like it used to come right to, I think, here somewhere. Oops. Yeah, up here. And so I just extended it so it's more down in the corner here, and then that way, you're almost always cutting with it down, so should be able to drop oil. Now this is kind of like a vent. There's oil all over in this thing. We'll get to the other reason why there's oil, but there was oil leaking out of here. There's a little duckbill in there. It's obviously like a vent. I think it's a vent of some sort for the tank. But I ended up just plugging it right off. I just put something over top of it, so if it doesn't work, I can always take it apart and put it back to stock. I just put some tin foil over the duckbill, and then I put silicone over that. But it vents pretty good through the cap, so I don't know if it's supposed to vent through the cap as well as there, but it allows pressure both ways. I put oil in the tank and everything, so there's plenty of pressure that's able to release or be drawn in. So I don't see the need to have all this oil spilling out of this duckbill, and the duckbill did seem fine. I took it out and everything seemed good, but there's definitely a little bit of oil that was getting out of there. So we're just going to try that. I don't know, maybe I did a big no-no there. I don't know if somebody knows more about that. By all means, put it in the comments and let me know what I should have done or whatever. But I just figured it vented enough from the cap that we're just going to use that. Then, because what I'm getting is there's so much oil that gets in the bottom of this thing. I thought it was just from the oil pump line, but I fixed it and it's still getting oil in there. So here's the cases, and like here's the one that the engine sits in, right here, and this just gets caked all in here with wet, oily sawdust. Instead of blowing out through the cooling fins, it's crazy how much, like I cleaned it right out completely. I cut one log with it for maybe 10 minutes just to test the saw to see if it would die, and when I took it all apart, it was already half full. And I mean, it was caked in, all the cooling, it fills into the cooling fins on here, everything. Like, it's not your typical, I know there's always supposed to be a little bit, but there seems to be nothing. So anyway, what I'm going to do to stop the oil from getting in there is, here's the two case halves. They're just plastic or whatever, but this is where the oil is, right here. So when the cap comes through here, can you see that? You can kind of see it. When the cap comes through here, like if you're filling it up, all the oil just dumps right down and gets by the cap, and it has nowhere to go but inside the case. So can you imagine, after years and years, it's just, there's nowhere for the oil to go, so the oil just stays in there. So what I'm going to do there is, I've already filled that up, plugged that other hole, and the other thing I'm going to do is, when the oil tank goes in, the cap will be on the outside of that though, and I'm just going to put a bead of silicone in when I put the oil tank in. I'll just put some black silicone, and then when I put the cases together, then if somebody spills oil, it's not going to be able to just drip down into it'll just drip down the side of the saw like it does on just about every other model. So that's a bad design. I don't know what they were thinking there. The other thing is, the fuel tank really seems to pressure up, and it's like there's no airflow. Where does it go here? There's no so it goes in there. So the engine sits in there, and it butts up against here, like the crankcase. So I don't know if the heat's transferring enough. There's that little duckbill right there. You can see it. Where is it? Right there. Can you see that little thing? It seems fine and everything, but the tank was pressuring up a lot, and you know, when it seems like they push the fuel past the needle. So there's a couple things I can do there. I can stretch the spring on the float valve inside the carb, or
I'm gonna try this and see. Maybe it won't pressure up as much if the fuel keeps cooler. I don't know. Maybe it won't vapor lock, stuff like that. So what I did was I put tin foil on there. I've done this before with quads, and a lot of people have actually, to stop quads from vapor locking. When the tank sits right on top of the cylinder head of the engine, they just put heat tape and it reflects the heat away. So we'll see what it does there. I'm going to put little pieces of fuel line. I'm just going to cut little tiny pieces of fuel line, like, you know, 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to put them around, and I'm going to put another piece of tin foil there. And the idea is just to give a bit of an air gap and reflect the heat, because there's just all the heat seems to get right to that tank. Maybe it won't do a thing, but this is what we're doing. We're just having fun with it, right? Like, this isn't to win any competitions. This is just to make a saw that's not cutting good and make it keep cutting good. And maybe it would have a better reputation if they built it this way, you know? Because these saws, from what I hear, they don't have a great reputation. A lot of people say they're junk, just like the Poolins or the Polans. You know, everybody says they're junk, and I don't know, I'm making them work pretty good. So when I put the case halves together, this piece is exposed to the heat. So I just put a little heat tape around the fuel lines, and then I took super glue and I put them around the fuel where they go into the tank. It's got all new lines and everything, but I put super glue there just so that no fuel or anything can dump out, because I'm just trying to keep it as leak free as I can in this crankcase area. I did the same on the oil hose, so I just put a little bit around the where it comes through the case. So that's what we're doing there. So this isn't major mods here. This is just little things that I'm experimenting with. But I'm gonna, you know, see if I can maybe cut good consistently. The other thing is, it just seems to suck a crazy amount. Either it's just because it's not getting out of the saw, or it's sucking way more in. I don't know what. But, you know, it's got holes like every other saw in there. But it's just, it's unbelievable how much sawdust stays in the saw. And I don't know, it's probably just because it was wet, or I hope that it was. But I made this little guard. I don't know if I'm going to put it on or not, but this is just like for bad lighting there. This is just coolant hose material, you know, that they put over a coolant hose. And I thought maybe I could just put that in there, and then every so often you'd have to take the cover off. But I don't know, it's probably just going to collect and then stay right in there. So then I thought, well, I'm going to have to somehow, if I want to do this, put it on the outside. You know? I've never seen a saw that had to have this mesh or anything on the outside. But, you know, the Poolins have great big fins on them, and they don't, there's a little bit of sawdust in there, but nothing crazy. So I don't know. Maybe it is all just because of the oil, and that's it. So we're not doing that for now, but we'll look at that later, if it's still a problem even after I seal it up and no oil's getting there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little aluminum foil on the oil tank. Actually, I'm probably not going to do that now. I was going to do that before, because here just had the duckbill, and then it had a little tiny piece of foam, just like a little piece of foam like that on top, and it was just soaking wet, and there was all oil all over here. So the original plan was maybe I would, because it's exposed to the heat as well, so I thought maybe I'll just put heat tape on there to keep the heat, you know, so the oil doesn't get too thin, because that's obviously when it's going to leak the most, when it's thin. But we'll see. Maybe I'll still put it on there. So that's that, and then that's about it for little mods. I'm not doing anything with the porting or nothing like that. Like, I just want it to be good and reliable. I don't think, what else was there? Yeah, so pretty much just going to try and have it so that this thing can cut all day long, and when you're done cutting and you put the saw down, it's going to start up for you, not like 16 pulls to get it going like a lot of them when they vapor lock, you know. And some new saws do that too, right? There's some well-known good saws do that, and it's just there's a few little things you can do. So as far as getting heat out, where's the exhaust on this thing? Right here. So once this thing's all together, it's pretty encased. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just flip the saw on its side. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do all the time. I don't know. But this way the heat can just naturally rise out of there. This way, I guess it could still get out, but this is all shielded in pretty good. I actually noticed that this saw runs really cool. despite maybe the shielding, that's why it runs so cool, because it is so tightly shielded. But when you shut it off, there's a lot of heat that stays in there, so it's kind of like a good in one way but bad in the other. So what I'm going to do is when I put these cases together, I'm going to put tin foil. Everything's tin foil here. Where's my tin foil hat? I'm just going to put like tin foil on there to reflect the heat away from the carburetor area. They already have like a little shield, but I'm going to take it a step further and I'm going to put it all in here, and it'll just stop the heat from rising and getting up into the carburetor area. So everything you can do to make the fuel stay cooler, the more consistent it's going to run, and technically more power, because like drag racers, you know, they take their fuel line and they wrap it in, they coil it in a cold can or whatever they call it, and then they fill it with ice and then they go racing. It supposedly just makes a little more power, you know, and it's cool. So we won't get that cold, but every little bit helps. So that's kind of what we do. We do a whole bunch of little things to these saws that not any one of them is a big mod, but it should still, you know, make them run a little better. So I just like tinkering with these saws because everybody hates them. So I like the challenge of trying to take something that everybody says is a piece of junk and make it decent. There's some people that say they're good saws, but I don't know of anybody. There's not many YouTube videos on these saws, and there's not many of guys, you know, cutting firewood all day. I'm going to try and cut a cord of firewood and just see how it acts and how it lasts, right? They definitely have good power for 35 cc's. There's no doubt about it. They're no slouch. Like it's I don't know. It actually may be a 38 cc's. It says 35 on the cover, and then the sticker says 38. So they say there was 32, 35, and 38. I don't know if there really was. That's like Poulin. They claimed that there was all these different sizes, but there wasn't. There was only the two. There was the 36 and the 42. But like that saw says 34, and it measures 40. It's a 40 cc. So I don't know what they were doing there, trying to make sales, and then I don't know if they got charged for false advertising or something, and so now they're trying to say that they were legitimately 34 cc's, but I haven't ran into anybody on the forums or anybody that found anything different. So it sounds like it was just a marketing thing, market them so they could sell different saws or whatever, right? So yeah, this thing's kind of like a 3516. I can hardly, when I Google this PowerMac PM325AV, I don't know if that's just a Canadian thing. This thing says right on it Moto Master, so it was bought at Canadian Tire. My neighbor bought the thing brand new. He said it never ran right since day one, and when it did run, it was acting up, or it didn't want to start from day one. Then when it did start, so I put a carb kit in it. I put all new lines in it, fuel filter, and we're gonna try our little mods and just see what happens, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and start putting this thing together, and I got a coil ordered up for it already, but we're just gonna try this one just to see, and yeah, we'll see if it keeps cutting, and if it does, great, we'll take it out and I'll do a video of it cutting. Okay, stay tuned.